So what I'm going to talk about is what I see as an inherent bias in our tax system. So I'm not talking about any kind of formal biases, because if you think about the tax laws, and I've had people say to me, normally males, going, there's no bias in our tax system. Everyone gets the same deductions, gets taxed at the same rate, etc. How could our tax system possibly be biased? Well, we know there's pay gaps. We know women end up with different superannuation. We know in the transfer system, it tends to be women who end up worse off. So I'm not talking about explicit equality, but the implicit bias. Now, most people in the room will have done an accounting degree or a law degree and done tax subjects. And you'll also know in those subjects, what we tend to focus on when we talk about tax is this idea of equity, efficiency, and ease of administration. We go back to Adam Smith's principles. We've all learnt that. We did it at university. Yet even those concepts of equity and efficiency in the tax and feminist literature actually highlight the limitations in analysing and addressing explicit and implicit gender inequality. So essentially, we can have formal equality, but is there really substantive equality when we look at the outcomes? And we've talked a lot this morning as well about looking at outcomes. Now, we also have gender responsive budgeting, and that includes gender impact analysis and political engagement components. And that's made significant inroads in some countries. We were doing really well in Australia until 2014. It was always part of our annual budget process. That's since been very much watered back. So in that sense, we're going backwards. And that's some of the reason we're going backwards in areas that Professor Triggs was speaking about this morning as well. Now, what also happens is much of that work focuses on an analysis of existing tax regimes, so specific taxes, specific policies, rather than developing that holistic approach to tax system design. UN Women have also put out a wonderful report. They put out a report in 2015 that incorporates tax in relation to equality. And they also stress what I'm stressing here. It's all about substantive equality. And they stress the fact that if substantive equality is to be achieved, economic and social policies must work in tandem. And the problem is, traditional economic policy is seen as promoting economic growth, while social policy addresses its causalities, poverty, inequality. So the question is, how do we actually achieve that tandem approach? And I suggest that the answer lies in the differences in thinking between men and women. I'm not suggesting the same kind of thinking that Catherine referred to as psychobabble. I'm not for a minute suggesting women's brains are any different to men, and I absolutely agree with the literature out there that very mixed findings, and in fact they probably don't think the same. And I have a husband who can't read a map to save his life, and I can, and I have a husband who irons and I can't. So personally I also believe it's psychobabble. So what I'm suggesting is that rather than this gender responsive budgeting or analysing the policies afterwards, so we introduce superannuation and we say it's equal, everyone gets their 9.5%, everyone has the same opportunity. Let's actually look at what's wrong with the outcomes and go back and right at the beginning start thinking about equality issues. Can there be a greater contribution by women at the input stage of tax reform, decision-making, policy choices, and bring to the table a range of technical knowledge and decision-making skills? And that's what I'd put to everyone in the room. We all have those skills. How are we actually bringing those to the table to make a difference at the beginning of the process? So what I call for is greater contribution by women at that actual input stage. She won't be making any actual decisions, obviously. So I think that's what we want to do. We want to make actual decisions. So very, very briefly, how do businesses and how could tax benefit from having women in leadership positions? Academic studies have shown better financial performance. Certainly in the US, Fortune 500 companies with more female board directors attain significantly higher financial performance. Then there was a study in 2011 conducted by Zenga Folkman, and it was actually published in the Harvard Business Review, which came up with some really positive results for us as women in the room. Women are better at developing others. They're better at developing themselves. They're better at building relationships. They have more integrity. They have more initiative. Their results were rated more highly on their drive for results than men. They inspired and motivated others more than men. They were better collaborators. They stretched goals, better at problem solving, were the champions of change, better at being able to communicate powerfully and prolifically, and in terms of innovation, about the same, but women still slightly edged out men just a little.